Hi, it's Chris Watkin, and at the Negotiator Conference 2018, I came across these two gentlemen, Sean Amner, who is an estate agent in South London, and his business partner, Neil Johnson. And I got talking to them on the stands at the Negotiator Conference, and I thought their piece of PropTech was absolutely fantastic. So they've come up today in April 2019 to the studios in Grantham, and I'm going to talk about Trueview. I must stress to you that they haven't paid a penny to me to be here or any contribution towards editing, but I just thought this was an absolutely fantastic bit of prop tech and I wanted to find out more. So buckle up, sit down, see how you get on, and I'm going to find out a bit about this bit of prop tech. And as I said, not getting anything from this, I just thought it was a wonderful piece of kit and I wanted to share with you. So Sean, Neil, what is Trueview? And then we'll go back and talk about why you invented it. So go on then.
Well, essentially, Trueview is a feedback platform that allows agents to ensure that their vendors get instant feedback immediately following every viewing. And that feedback is presented as data, allowing the vendors ultimately to see how their property is performing in the means of a score that's allocated to their property.
What, like a percentage score or something like that?
Yeah, essentially, yeah. Buyers are asked using an app to complete a very simple survey that allows them to rate the property against key criteria.
Okay.
So things such as location, condition, value, likelihood of them making
What, like
an offer.
marks out of 10 or marks out of 100?
1 to 100. And then those scores are aggregated and they're weighted in terms of how important they are in the buying decision. So location, as we know, is more important than condition, so that's upweighted. So every individual viewing gets a score of those individual results combined, and then they all go back to combine to give the property an overall score. There's an algorithm that we use that helps to work out the scoring side of things. And then instantly following that viewing, the sales negotiator will ask the buyer to complete the survey on the app. It takes 15 seconds. And then an email is sent immediately to the vendor with the results from that last viewing. But importantly, there's a link on that email that takes the vendor through to their own webpage where they can see the overall score, and then importantly, how their property is scoring compared to other properties that are on the market that have either been sale agreed or remain unsold. So it benchmarks it for them, and it also gives them the ability to look at all the individual viewings and how individual people have scored their property. So any obvious sales blockers are highlighted and are there to review and to consider. And from that point on, the sales negotiator, it doesn't replace verbal feedback, but it acts as a really good foundation on which to base the narrative. So it's powerful.
So, Neil, you're not an agent. How did you guys get together and how did you invent this? Because I know you've been in the estate agency since 2003, haven't you?
Yes, 2003, yeah. So 16, 17
How did you invent this?
So Sean and I used to work together in a previous life, and I've always been involved in technology, media and technology throughout all of my career. And so, as most great ideas, we were talking in the pub, and Sean explained the problem that the biggest source of conflict between a vendor and their agent is always feedback. It's the quality of the feedback and the regularity.
Or whether you get it in the first place.
Or whether you get it, exactly.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so we were discussing this concept, and Sean had the original insight that providing a questionnaire would be able to bridge that gap in the first instance. And then we developed it from there. In
What year was this?
About 3 years ago?
Yeah.
So 2016.
Yeah.
2015.
And we beta
exactly.
tested this for a couple of years in my offices
Okay.
before taking it to the market. So.
And so we developed the product. We got some seed funding. We built the product, and that's how it grew.
So, what did you want from this Trueview that normal negotiators picking the phone up wouldn't do?
Well, there were two aspects to it. I thought, first of all, you think about the whole process of selling a property, the classic thing in most people's cases, their home is their biggest and largest asset. And very often, once they've instructed an estate agent, from that point on, not in all cases, but from that point on, the vendor can often feel kind of very remote from the process.
Oh.
Okay, they will get their telephone calls with
Well,
feedback.
if you read all those reports, that the biggest criticism of estate agents is communication, isn't
Yeah,
it?
absolutely. And they don't really feel as though they are part of the journey, and they are really at the beck and call of the agent to contact them. Very often, there are perfectly legitimate reasons why the agent hasn't called. So again, there is a disconnect between expectation. If you're selling a property, you've seen the house that your dream home, you need to sell yours first, goes on the market, you have your first viewing at 10 o'clock on a Saturday. By 10:30, if you haven't heard from the agent, you're really not very happy. However, the agent on a Saturday in particular has spent the rest of the day doing other viewings. So it's not unreasonable that there has been no feedback up until that point. But from the seller's point of view, it's a huge frustration.
Why do you think estate agents are so bad at viewing feedback?
Well, I don't know if they're particularly bad at it. I think that very often, on a Saturday, one neg could do 20, 25 viewings. So there's a lot of stuff to cut through. Also, if you've had 5 or 6 viewings on a particular property, it's unlikely that the sales negotiator is going to go through every single one meticulously. Instead, what they will do is summarise the overall viewpoint. Now, if you're a seller and the agent keeps telling you, oh yes, it's the road, everyone thinks the road's too busy, it starts to become really frustrating. And you
Well,
now
they
want to shoot
start
the
to
messenger.
blame the estate agent.
Absolutely.
Don't
It's a classic shoot the messenger scenario. And what that can result in is negs sometimes feeling slightly awkward, perhaps being completely transparent with their feedback.
Or probably even sugarcoating it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, which doesn't get anybody anywhere because it's leaving the vendor with a slightly, overly optimistic view in terms of how things are going. It's not allowing the agent to highlight the obvious issues that perhaps are creating the sales blockers. And ultimately, it just prolongs things and often won't get either party to where they need to be, which is sale agreed. So the concept was born from trying to find a more professional solution to the whole aspect of feedback. We often refer to it as feedback analytics, which makes sense.
And I think that's really important because quite often what we hear is that the really valuable thing from a vendor's point of view is the fact that they can see all of the feedback all in one go in the round. Rather than getting a little bit of it, one day and the next, and a little bit the next, and that allows them to contextualise any bad feedback that they might get much more effectively. And from an agent's point of view, if you're an agent and the house is by a school or a busy road, you know what the problem is going to be. But the point is that the Trueview data, the analytics as we call it, gives you the data over which a good agent can put the narrative.
So what
to the
exactly?
vendor.
So when someone views a property, what happens afterwards? Do they get like a text message?
No, there's an app that the sales negotiator will produce. So immediately after the viewing, it's great, Chris. Before you disappear, a couple of quick questions just to ascertain exactly what you thought about the property. And it's a shared screen scenario. Some people hand the phone to the buyer, others make it a more of a sort of shared experience.
But that's great if it's an accompanied viewing.
Yes, if it isn't an accompanied viewing, then
which
there
is the vast majority of viewings.
Yeah, I accept that. I think that there is a solution for that, whereby we do send the buyer an email asking them to fill in exactly the same survey. However, being completely honest, it really does work, and it's designed to work with accompanied viewing. So yeah, I think in
Why won't it work with accompanied viewings?
well, it works with accompanied viewings. With unaccompanied viewings, because the moment has passed. The buyer that buyer may have viewed 3 or 4 properties on that Saturday. They've got home, they've looked at their email perhaps Sunday morning. It's just another email for them to deal with. So we think it's really important to get them in the moment. And by and large, the feedback we've had from buyers has been phenomenal because, we live in that kind of TripAdvisor age where everybody really wants their opinion heard. So it allows the buyer an opportunity to let people know what they think of the property. But also the number of buyers that have said to my staff, well, this is great. We're selling our house at the moment. We're not getting this from our agent.
Okay.
So, we've picked up business off the back of that.
Are more viewings accompanied in London compared to the rest of the UK?
I don't know really any agent that doesn't accompany viewings, but that might be a quirk of London and the South East. I know we had a conversation with Trueview with one of the larger corporates some time ago, and were surprised to discover that, as you say, quite a high chunk of their viewings were unaccompanied.
It's not a general story we hear though. Most of the people, most of our customers, and most of the people we speak to don't raise unaccompanied viewings as a problem.
And I think because of the nature of the product, it's generally our experience so far. It's being adopted by those agents that are perhaps slightly more forward-thinking. They're slightly more conscious about the kind of service they offer, and that automatically means in many cases they're accompanying their viewings anyway.
I'm a firm believer that every viewing should be accompanied, because the worst person to sell a house is a vendor.
Yes, yeah,
Definitely.
Well, on that note, we had somebody recently that insisted on doing all their own viewings. It was a very individual character, shall we say. And she made a point of explaining to everybody that viewed that her mother had died in the sitting room. So, that didn't really help.
So what questions get asked then on this app then?
Well, the questions are divided into two kind of clusters, really. The first questions are designed to get a gauge in terms of what the person thinks of the property, and the latter questions are designed to measure their intent. So in other words, they like it, but are they going to buy it? So the first questions in terms of finding out what they think about the property, we ask what they think of the location, what they think of the condition, what they think of the size and the layout of the property, and what they think of the outside space.
And is this a mark out of 100?
Yep. Yes, yeah, it's a bunch of sliders. So it's literally your slide across the screen.
Okay.
0
Is
to
there any
100.
facility to put any text in?
No. People have asked about that. We don't think that's a great idea. We think any verbal interpretation of the numbers is best handled by the estate agent. It's designed purely to give people a metric in which to gauge the response. So they're the first questions, and then the remaining questions are: how does it compare to other properties that they've viewed? What's the likelihood of them making an offer, and what do they think of the price? And what you'll see, look, we all know in the industry, properties very often come on ambitiously priced for a whole bunch of different reasons. I think I read somewhere years ago that about 40% of all properties go on the market at vendor price. So very often you'll find if it's a really great property and it ticks all the boxes, but it's overpriced, the first questions score really, really well, and the last questions fall off a cliff.
Yes.
So it then becomes really easy to interpret that and have those, kind of consultative conversations with the vendor. Look, Mr. and Mrs. Vendor, it's very clear that people love the location, etc., etc. But it's not going beyond that because there's a disconnect in terms of what they think of the price.
Can the agent themselves, if they're doing the company viewing, put any notes in at the time, or was that not? Is that
no? That isn't a feature. I mean, it's something that I guess they could do that. Using just a notes app, or just remember what the specifics are.
But fundamentally, we believe that the power of Trueview is to provide that feedback direct from the buyer to the vendor, and let the really experienced agent explain it and provide the narrative over the top.
So as soon as that's filled in, does it automatically get sent off?
Instantly, yeah.
Could it be held back 24 hours if you decide, or is it that's the whole?
No, it goes.
purpose?
The only time it doesn't, if it's an agent that's slightly more rural in terms of their location, and if at the point when they hit submit they don't have any 4G signal, then it will just sit on the phone until they come back into signal, then it will go. The instant nature of it is really desirable. I mean, we've had vendors, again, the anecdotal evidence has been really positive, where somebody's been sat around having a coffee with some friends. Just so happens one of the other friends' property's on the market at the same time. It's a Saturday mid-morning, and this particular person's phone is pinging every 20 to 25 minutes with the viewing feedback, and it's great. They're getting a real-time view of what's going on, and the other person who's selling that the agent isn't using Trueview is because, what's going on? Well, I've not heard anything from my agent. You've had 4 emails in the last 2 hours. So it's in that respect, it's quite unique. Of course, the other element of it, in terms of purely from an agent's perspective, is that all of this data, as well as it living on the vendor's own webpage, it all sits at the agent's interface with Trueview, and they have the ability to create reports. So going back to that point a moment ago, whereby a lot of property comes on perhaps ambitiously priced, and very often the vendor's mindset is, well, you need to put it on high because everybody knocks you down, right? That's what happens. And all they do is put it on high, and they just completely suppress response. So we're then able as agents to use this data and say, well, look, here's a property very similar to yours that we were marketing just 2 or 3 weeks ago. Here's a Trueview report. You can see we had 15 viewings, 3 offers, and it ended up getting the asking price. So, Mr. Vendor, you don't need to fall into that trap. You know, the way to get the best outcome is to ensure that you're generating strong response quickly. And if you over egg the price, all of the effort the agent's doing will just fall on stony ground.
It's almost like you're giving them proof that you shouldn't overvalue.
Well, it's proof. Yeah, it's proof in a number of different ways. I mean, you know, but again, many years ago, that the psychology behind buying is that people are more concerned through fear of loss than the prospect of gain. So if you can demonstrate that you know, by allowing it to sit at the market for an extended period, it's going to impact on the amount that you get for your property, and you can demonstrate why that's not a good idea using these reports, then people are more motivated by that than perhaps choosing an agent where they're going to save a little bit on the fee. So agents can demonstrate their success very effectively.
Okay, it's all very good helping the vendor, and don't get me wrong, I think it's great because most PropTech seems to help the agent cut costs. What's it done for your business, both listings and fees, and getting properties on at the right price?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, we tested this in my offices for probably the best part of 18 months to 2 years to ensure that it...
Whereabouts is your estate agency?
Sort of Surrey, South London borders. So it's kind of the sort of suburban London market, really.
Okay.
So we tested it to make sure that it was right.
And is the current version a lot different?
Yeah,
that's the biggest pain in the backside with PropTech is that it's designed by people who are not estate agents.
Yeah, well, yeah. Hopefully, in our case, I think I'm an estate agent. I think I've qualified after 17 years. So we tested it. We wanted to make sure that one, it provided that customer service improvement.
Yes.
We talked earlier about the common criticisms about lack of feedback, bloody blah. So we felt that was a key role for it to play. But the other role, the important role, or equally as important, if not more important, was how is it going to enhance and improve my business? Listings definitely increased because of it.
Why?
Well, because I'm demonstrating to you as a vendor that, in amongst all the other stuff that we do, this is how we handle feedback. So you're going to get instant feedback. The guys that go out listing will always demo it to the vendor. So I think it highlights...
Have you done any promotional marketing material on it?
Yes, we've got... I mean, we use a PowerPoint presentation, and it's one of the slides within that, a bit of a talking point. And again, after the slide, we then demo it. So vendor, and it's a real lean forward moment. The vendor sits forward and, okay, how does it work? And I'm going to get an email straight away. That's fantastic. Love that. Love the idea of that. And they like the idea that it's transparent. Again, agents are often maligned for all sorts of different reasons, and people sometimes think that the feedback is really what the agent wants it to be, as opposed to it being genuinely from the horse's mouth. So again, for the agent demonstrating that they're forward thinking, they're embracing technology, and it's showing a degree of transparency is a big win for
And
listeners.
what advantages do vendors get for comparing their property against other properties?
Well, do you want to talk a bit about the algorithm? Because that's the key behind it, isn't it?
It is, yeah. So what we do, because the Trueview platform knows which viewings led to the point where a property went under sale agreed, we effectively take all of those properties that have been sold and the viewings that led to them, hive them off, and every single viewing that we get in, we compare them to them. And so we can give the vendor a kind of a score which provides them with an indicative response of how likely we think that viewing is going to lead to an offer.
That's interesting.
And so, and that's very, very, very predictive. So it's very much in line with actually what ends up happening. So, for example, the average property will score around about 100. But if your property is regularly getting scores of around about 130, then we can pretty much guarantee you that you're going to get an offer from the people that have already viewed it. And that's almost always true.
And also which buyer, because you'll see, you'll have a load of people that are scoring at about 110, 120, then somebody scores it at 180. So for them it ticks every box. We've also used that as a very strong aid for negotiation, because we've all had properties that they're going to be very tough to sell for all sorts of different reasons. and we've had a load of viewings, and the feedback is all really, really negative. Price is too high. Then you find that needle in the haystack, the person that loves it for whatever reason, but they've offered quite low. But we're now able to use that to the vendor. Look, this guy really is the needle in a haystack. Don't let him slip through the net when we're getting struggling.
And again, that's the real power of the vendor being able to see all of the feedback all in one view. Because without that, they don't let that buyer go.
Yeah, they wouldn't have had the sufficient
It's
ammunition.
almost like a flag to basically say, look, this person's pretty important. We should look after them.
Yes.
Yeah,
exactly so.
Well, and also, if you launch a property on a Saturday, and there's been loads and loads of viewings, and the sales negs are thinking, right, okay, well now I've got to ring 12 people to find out what they thought. They can go onto on their Trueview page, and they will see that of those 12 viewings, only 5 scored it above 110. So they're my hot buyers to follow up on. So it's an efficiency from the agent's point of view in that respect. And it is the predictive element of it is pretty much bang on every time. So.
And when because I know you've sold the software, to agents in your locality and further on, do you find the same sort of patterns in terms of predictability work in most locations?
Yes, absolutely, we do. Because what we're not doing is we're not comparing one location, with a location 300 miles down the road. We're comparing. We only compare viewings from one office, so you never see any other agent's data.
But the algorithm behind it is obviously comparing it against everything in the country, isn't it?
No, the algorithm behind it is only comparing it against that particular agent's data.
But surely there's going to be other properties with other agents. Not necessarily it shows it, but the algorithm has learnt that this score, the higher the score, obviously the better, is more likely to go. Because if you start, you've got no algorithm.
No, it's extreme. You have 3. That's a good point. So a new agent to come on board, we say for the first 3 months, the score will be pegged against the office average. It needs 3 months worth of data to then start making meaningful comparisons. But we think it's right that, because every office will have its own peculiarity. So, there are certain parts of London where location is absolutely, premium, and there are other parts of the country where perhaps it isn't such a big factor. More, perhaps size is an issue. So we think it's only right and proper that the vendors they're seeing their comparative score based on other properties of a similar ilk.
So what has your feedback system, Trueview, done to your fees in the last couple of years?
Our fees have increased by about 18%. So we took a conscious decision to push our fees up.
You mean your fees have gone up?
Yes, yeah.
And market share remained pretty good, if not gone up?
Yeah, market share for sale agreed last year, 2018, based on the Rightmove best price guide data, or the Rightmove Intel data. We were number 1 for sales agreed in our area. And fees have gone up, I think, purely because we're now able to demonstrate how successful we are at the outcomes we achieve. And like I said before...
How do you just demonstrate that on the sofa, on the freeval, though?
Well, because we can run off these reports, as I mentioned earlier, that we take along with us, along with our best price guide and our comps and our applicant lists and all that sort of stuff. And we're able to demonstrate to the vendor. Because, look, an agent will say to the vendor, oh, yeah, we had a similar house, 3-bed semi just round the corner. We had 20 viewings and we got the asking price. But you've just got to go on assuming that they're being honest with you, right? We all know that agents perhaps struggle in terms of their reputation for honesty, although that's often not an accurate reflection of how things are. It's just the mindset that exists. So now we're able to take with us reports that highlight similar properties we've marketed, all the viewing data's on there, along with the asking price, how many viewings, price agreed, and how long it took to go under offer. So we use those and demonstrate that we are good at what we do, and we will get you a much better outcome.
It's also really true to note that when we're in sales conversations with agents, we always know that we're onto a good thing if those if those agents say that they're really interested in protecting their margin, because agents that are committed to protecting their margin want to provide better service.
I mean, what it looks like to me is, if you don't mind me saying, is there's an awful lot of PropTech out there. I made a note of this earlier on. There's a lot of PropTech out there that helps agents cut costs, but there's not much PropTech that helps them improve their fee.
Absolutely.
And I think this is what this does. I should be being paid for this, but I know I'm not. It is good.
Yeah, well, look, I think it's designed to fulfil 2 things. Firstly, the customer relationship thing, the customer service thing. Feedback, again, often a point of criticism. This brings it into the modern age, it makes it immediate and it makes it meaningful. But then the flip side is the agent can take that data, they can use that data to print off various reports that can be used to help demonstrate how successful they are, to help demonstrate the difference they make, to help demonstrate their successes, and also aid negotiation. And also the other thing that they used often for is price amendments, because it's very easy to say to the vendor, look, it's sticking out like a sore thumb. You know, I know you wanted to try that ambitious price, or I know that other agent recommended a bit more and you went with that, but look, it's there staring you in the face. The longer we leave it, the worse it will get.
And there's a number, isn't there? I just love that. The fact
Yeah,
that,
it's a number.
yeah. What about integrating it into software? Because I mean, if you don't mind me saying, you'll then have to cut and paste it and put it into your CRM system.
We don't mind you saying that at all. It's while that process of updating Trueview is very light, it's very simple. We're not talking about reams and reams and reams of data. But by the same token, we know that estate agents are busy, particularly their administrators. And so it's absolutely part of our roadmap to build integration between Trueview and estate agency CRMs, and we're in conversations with a number of them.
But in the short term, they're going to have to cut and paste. And
There's a bit of double handling in terms of data entry, but you know, we tend to look at it that at the point that you've got a new instruction, you know, the office administrator, assuming that's how the branch is set up, will do a number of things. They'll order the EPC, they'll order the photography, they'll order the floor plan, they'll order the for sale board, they'll add it to their CRM, it's probably already on there, but then they switch it over to being a for sale property. And at that point, they then just add it to Trueview. And it's literally address, price, the email address, because the vendor will need that to get the vendor to get their emails through.
Okay. And what are the other plans to take Trueview forward in the next couple of years?
Well, I think there's a couple of natural add-ons. I mean, the whole sales progression piece we know there's plenty of solutions out there for that already. But what's good about Trueview is because of the dynamic nature of the viewing feedback, it's pulling people in to the system. So once they're in and they're engaging with it, it's then an obvious place to have the milestone for the conveyancing.
Because if you don't mind me saying, you know, there's the likes of your Purple Bricks have their online platforms, and the likes of Repit and other CRMs are available, have their own vendor management system, but really, quite frankly, it's a pile of pants. Yours sounds really good.
Well, thank you. I think that
Well, that's the reason you're here.
we'd
guys.
certainly agree with that. But also, the other thing to remember is, you know, the likes of the large CRMs that have their vendor portals or the equivalent. You know, that's great, but generally, it's only the larger estate agency groups that really have the time and the resources and the energy and the financial ability to you know, go out and buy those. You know, this fulfills a particular role in terms of the feedback nature of it and the instruction winning nature of it, but it also gives them their little place in that realm. So, you know, for the smaller independents that perhaps haven't got those wider resources, it's a nice, easy fix for them.
Good stuff. Guys, if you want to find out a bit more about Trueview, what's your web address?
www.trueview.property.
And how do you spell that?
Trueview.
Good stuff.
Is that right?
Check that.
Well done.
There you go.
I'm an estate agent.
Estate agents can. Sean, Neil, thank you very much, guys. If you want to check them out, as I said, this video has been done totally off my back because I just love what I had to see. There's not many prop techs out there that I think, bloody hell, that's good. And yeah, what I'm impressed with is that I even gave you some feedback and you've taken that on board, and that's in the system. So who knows, this could be the future of estate agency feedback. You heard it here first. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
Cheers.